Before you even open your eyes in the morning, your body has already started making decisions, not conscious decisions, biological ones. In the quiet moments between sleep and waking, a set of internal signals begins to shift. Hormones start rising. Energy systems begin to activate. Your body prepares itself for the day ahead. And hidden within this process is something most people never realize. Your body is deciding how it will use its stored energy. But the energy it may target first is not the soft fat you can pinch under your skin. It is a different kind of fat. A deeper one. This fat sits out of sight, wrapped around some of the most important organs in your body, around your liver, around your heart, around your pancreas. You cannot see it in the mirror, and you cannot grab it with your fingers, yet it plays a powerful role in your health. Researchers call it visceral fat. And unlike the fat just beneath the skin, this type of fat behaves very differently inside the body. It is closely linked to conditions like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, chronic inflammation, and a range of metabolic disorders that develop slowly over time. What makes this even more surprising is that many people who carry this fat do not look unhealthy at all. Some appear slim, some exercise regularly, yet this hidden fat can still be present, quietly influencing how the body functions. And here is where things become truly interesting. In the first minutes after waking, small habits can determine whether your body begins to access this stored energy or continues to protect it. The difference often comes down to what you do next. So the real question is this: when you wake up each morning, are you unknowingly triggering a process that helps your body burn this deep belly fat? Or are you closing that opportunity before the day has even begun? Here is the part most people misunderstand. For years, we have been told a very simple story about belly fat. Eat less. Move more. Burn more calories than you consume. And if the fat is still there, the explanation usually sounds the same. Not enough discipline, not enough consistency, not enough effort. But when you look closely at what actually happens in the body, that explanation starts to fall apart. You can see it in real life. Someone loses 10 pounds. Their face becomes slimmer. Their arms look leaner. Their clothes fit differently. Yet the area around the stomach barely changes. They lose 20 pounds. Still the same problem. Sometimes even after 30 pounds of weight loss, the belly seems stubbornly unchanged. At that point, many people assume something must be wrong with their metabolism, or their genetics, or their hormones. But in many cases, none of those explanations are the real reason. The deeper explanation lies in how the body categorizes different types of fat. Not all fat is treated the same. The fat that sits just beneath the skin is called subcutaneous fat. This is the soft layer you can pinch with your fingers. It moves when you walk. It shifts when you press on it. Your body is relatively willing to use this fat when energy is needed, but the fat stored deeper inside the abdomen is different. This fat sits close to vital organs and is connected to a dense network of blood vessels. From the body's perspective, it is not simply extra weight. It is a strategic energy reserve. Because of that, the body protects it far more aggressively. When you reduce calories or increase exercise, your body often releases energy from other areas first: your face, your arms, your legs. Meanwhile, this deeper fat may remain largely untouched. And once you understand that, something important changes. The problem is not that your body is working against you. In many ways, it is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is protecting what it believes is an important survival reserve. Now here is where the story becomes even more surprising. Most people think of body fat as something passive, just stored energy waiting to be burned when calories run low. But visceral fat does not behave that way. In fact, scientists now understand that this type of fat behaves much more like a biological organ. It is active. It communicates. It constantly sends chemical signals throughout the body. The cells inside visceral fat release substances that travel through the bloodstream and interact with major systems that control metabolism. They influence how your liver processes nutrients. They affect how your pancreas regulates insulin. They send signals that can alter inflammation levels across the entire body. Over time, this signaling can slowly reshape how the body functions. When visceral fat becomes excessive, the chemical messages it releases can push the body toward chronic inflammation. They can interfere with normal insulin responses. They can increase the workload placed on the liver and the cardiovascular system. This is why researchers often connect high levels of visceral fat with conditions such as type 2 diabetes, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, and other long-term health problems. But there is another detail that makes this even more unsettling. You cannot always judge visceral fat by appearance alone. Some people who carry dangerous levels of this fat do not look overweight at all. They may have a relatively slim frame. They may exercise regularly. Some even have visible abdominal muscles. And yet inside the abdominal cavity, fat can still accumulate around vital organs. This phenomenon is sometimes described as being skinny on the outside, but metabolically unhealthy on the inside. In everyday language, many people call it skinny fat. Studies have shown that individuals in this category can carry health risks surprisingly similar to those seen in people with obesity, which leads to an important realization. The number on the scale does not always tell the full story. What often matters more is where fat is stored and how that fat behaves once it is inside the body. And visceral fat, because of its location and biological activity, plays a far more powerful role than most people ever realize. So the next question naturally becomes this. If visceral fat is so active and so closely connected to our health, why does the body protect it so carefully? Why not burn it first? The answer lies deep in our evolutionary history. For most of human existence, food was never guaranteed. There were seasons of abundance, but also long stretches of scarcity. Our ancestors often faced days, sometimes weeks, where finding enough food was uncertain. Survival depended on the body's ability to store energy and release it at the right moment. Over thousands of generations, the human body developed strategies to deal with this reality. Energy had to be stored somewhere reliable. And more importantly, it had to be stored somewhere that could deliver fuel quickly to the organs that needed it most. Fat stored deep inside the abdomen turned out to be perfect for this role. Because it sits close to the liver and other vital organs, it has direct access to the bloodstream. When the body truly needs emergency energy, this fat can be mobilized rapidly. In other words, visceral fat became a kind of survival reserve. And like any reserve meant for emergencies, it is protected. The body built multiple biological safeguards around it. Hormonal signals, metabolic pathways, and feedback systems all work together to prevent that reserve from being used too easily. From an evolutionary perspective, this protection made perfect sense. If the body burned through its deepest energy stores too early, survival during long periods without food would become much harder. So the body learned to unlock this reserve only under specific conditions that historically signaled genuine scarcity. But here is where modern life changes everything. Today, food is almost always available. Many people eat shortly after waking, then continue eating several times throughout the day. From the body's perspective, the signal of scarcity almost never arrives. And if that signal never appears, the protected reserve remains exactly where it is. Stored, guarded, waiting for a situation that, in modern life, rarely comes. And this is where the morning becomes more important than most people realize. Because shortly after you wake up, your body enters a very specific biological state. Scientists call it the cortisol awakening response. Within the first 30 minutes after opening your eyes, cortisol levels naturally rise. This is not the kind of cortisol associated with chronic stress. It is a built-in signal from your circadian rhythm, designed to help you wake up and mobilize energy for the day ahead. Think of it as the body turning the lights on in its energy system. Cortisol sends a message throughout the body that says it is time to move, time to become active, time to make fuel available. One of the ways it does this is by activating an enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase. This enzyme has a very specific job. It unlocks stored fat. Inside fat cells, energy is stored in the form of triglycerides. Hormone-sensitive lipase begins breaking those molecules apart, releasing fatty acids into the bloodstream so they can be used as fuel. In simple terms, the door to the body's energy reserves starts to open. Muscles can begin using fat. The liver can process fatty acids. The body shifts toward drawing from stored energy instead of waiting for new calories to arrive. But this system has an important condition. It works best when insulin levels remain low. Insulin is the hormone that rises when food enters the bloodstream, especially foods rich in carbohydrates. Its job is to help the body store and process incoming energy. When insulin rises, the body switches priorities. Instead of releasing stored fuel, it focuses on managing the energy that has just arrived, and that shift happens very quickly. If breakfast enters the system immediately after waking, insulin begins to rise. The signal to release stored fat weakens. Hormone-sensitive lipase becomes less active. The door that had just begun to open starts closing again. So in the early minutes of the morning, something subtle but powerful is happening inside the body. A natural signal is preparing your metabolism to access stored energy, and the timing of your first meal can determine whether that signal continues or disappears before it ever has the chance to do its job. Now imagine something different. You wake up. Your body has already begun releasing signals that prepare it to use stored energy. But instead of eating immediately, you wait. Nothing dramatic happens at first. You are simply allowing the process that already started to continue. During this time, the body begins shifting into a slightly different metabolic state. Your cells gradually become more sensitive to insulin. This means they are more prepared to absorb energy when it becomes available. But because no new glucose is entering the system yet, the body has to look elsewhere for fuel. And that is when stored energy begins to play a larger role. Fat cells start releasing fatty acids into the bloodstream. These molecules become an alternative source of energy for muscles, organs, and other tissues. At the same time, certain hormones begin adjusting in ways that support this transition. One of them is a hormone called adiponectin. Adiponectin helps improve the body's ability to break down fat and use it as fuel. It also plays a role in reducing inflammation and supporting how the liver processes fats. As this hormone becomes more active, the metabolic environment inside the body becomes more favorable for using stored energy rather than depending entirely on incoming calories. Meanwhile, another signal slowly rises. Around 90 minutes to 2 hours after waking, levels of a hormone called ghrelin begin to increase. Most people know ghrelin as the hormone that makes you feel hungry, but hunger is only part of the story. Ghrelin is also linked to the body's effort to mobilize energy. It encourages the release of fuel that is already stored inside the body, so even as hunger begins to appear, another process is unfolding quietly beneath the surface. Energy reserves are being accessed. If light movement is added during this period, such as walking, stretching, or gentle exercise, something else begins to happen inside the cells. The tiny energy factories known as mitochondria become more active in burning fatty acids. Enzymes involved in fat metabolism can increase their activity, helping the body become more efficient at using fat as a fuel source. Over time, this repeated pattern teaches the body something important. It becomes better at switching between different fuel systems. Instead of relying only on incoming sugar from food, the body becomes more flexible. It learns to draw from stored fat when necessary and return to glucose when food is available. This ability is often described as metabolic flexibility, and as the fasting window continues a little longer, the liver may begin producing small amounts of ketones from fatty acids. These molecules can serve as another form of fuel for the brain and muscles, providing a steady energy source even when food has not yet arrived. None of this requires extreme fasting. It is simply the natural progression of metabolic signals that the body already knows how to run, as long as the morning is allowed to unfold without interruption. For a long time, the advice seemed simple. Eat breakfast early. Kickstart your metabolism. Fuel your body as soon as the day begins. For decades, this idea shaped how many people approach their mornings. But in recent years, researchers have started looking more closely at something different. Not just how much people eat, but when they eat. This area of research is often called time-restricted eating. Instead of focusing only on calories, scientists began studying how the timing of meals influences metabolism. In several studies, participants were divided into groups that consumed similar amounts of calories and followed similar activity levels. The key difference was the timing of their first meal. One group ate soon after waking. The other delayed their first meal and naturally extended the overnight fasting period into the morning. Over time, researchers began noticing interesting patterns. The total amount of weight loss between groups was often surprisingly similar. But the type of fat being reduced was not always the same. In many cases, the group that extended their morning fasting window showed greater reductions in visceral fat. At the same time, improvements were observed in markers related to metabolic health. Insulin sensitivity tended to improve. Inflammation markers often decreased. The body's ability to regulate blood sugar appeared to become more stable. Another area researchers explored involved exercise timing. Some studies compared people who exercised after eating breakfast with those who exercised before their first meal. Again, the difference was not always dramatic in total weight loss. But when scientists looked more closely at how the body was using energy, they found something interesting. People who exercised in a fasted state often showed a higher reliance on fat as a fuel source. In other words, the body appeared more willing to draw energy from stored fat during activity. None of these findings suggest that breakfast is inherently harmful. But they do highlight something important. Metabolism is not influenced only by how much food enters the body. Timing also plays a role. And when eating patterns align with certain biological signals, the body may respond in ways that affect where energy is stored and how it is used. So what does this actually look like in real life? All of the biology we have talked about might sound complex. Hormones rising and falling. Enzymes activating. Metabolism shifting between fuel systems. But the habits that support these processes are surprisingly simple. They begin the moment you wake up. Instead of immediately reaching for food, the first step is much more basic: hydration. After several hours of sleep, the body is naturally dehydrated. Drinking water soon after waking helps restore fluid balance and signals to the body that the day has begun. It also supports circulation and helps the body's systems start moving again. Once you are hydrated, gentle movement can make a difference. This does not need to be an intense workout. A short walk outside, some stretching, light yoga, or relaxed mobility exercises are often enough. Movement during this time encourages the body to continue using stored energy as fuel. It keeps the metabolic signals that started during the early morning window moving in the same direction. After that, the key element is simply time. Allowing a short period to pass before eating gives the body space to complete the transition that began when cortisol first rose after waking. For many people, waiting around 90 minutes is enough to support this process. Some may naturally extend that window a little longer, depending on their routine and comfort level. During this time, beverages without calories, such as black coffee or unsweetened tea, can usually fit into the routine without significantly disrupting the metabolic state. When the first meal does arrive, its composition matters. Meals built around protein, healthy fats, and fiber-rich foods tend to support stable blood sugar and sustained energy. These nutrients digest more gradually and help avoid rapid spikes and crashes in glucose levels. But it is important to remember that this approach is not universal. Certain groups should approach fasting cautiously or avoid it altogether. People who are pregnant or breastfeeding have very different energy needs. Individuals with blood sugar disorders, a history of disordered eating, or those taking medications that require food should consult a medical professional before experimenting with fasting. And that is an important point. This is not meant to be a rigid rule or a quick fix. It is simply a way of aligning daily habits with rhythms the body already understands. The goal is not to force the body into something unnatural. It is to create conditions that allow its existing systems to work the way they were designed to.